What's up, YouTube? We back. Today, we'll take a second look at the Julio Fulio trial as these guys fight for their lives. Literally, they're fighting for their lives because they are facing the death penalty in Florida. The prosecutor is laying down some really damaging testimony in regards to this case. He has all the T's crossed and the I's dotted. It's not looking very good for the guys, man. Let's take a look and see how this guy does his job against these people. Let's check it out.
All four of these defendants, they all sit over here at this L-shaped table. They sit over here and they are convicted because last week 12 of you went back there and you came back with a just and a true verdict, convicting them, and they sit there in their guilt. They are convicted. Convicted conspirators, convicted killers, they are convicted murderers. There is no doubt about that. What this is about is an entirely different thing. What you're here to decide today and going into tomorrow is what is the appropriate sentence for these defendants. They have been convicted, as the state told you in its opening statement, of planning and acting as a team in a concerted effort with one common goal: murder. Murder, the most evil and the most wicked crime that there is. The taking of another human life. And the evidence in this case has clearly demonstrated to you. I doubt any of you had any issue back there determining when you were deliberating that this was a premeditated crime. The court is going to instruct you tomorrow when you go out after all of the closing statements. She's going to read to you again the law on premeditation. And you remember that law from last week. You remember it? There has to be enough time to allow reflection for there to be premeditation. And clearly in your verdicts, you have found that. You would not have convicted them of conspiracy because you can't conspire. You can't have four people conspiring without premeditation. Was there premeditation in this case? Yes. But there was much, much more than just simple premeditation. Because when we talk about reflections, what are we talking about? Reflecting, having time to reflect. We're talking about decision making. Making a decision and acting upon that decision. That is reflecting. Solving a problem. That is reflecting. These defendants, in this case, did this for over 2 weeks at least, making decisions, solving problems, working through their plan. This is much more than simple premeditation. Premeditation can occur in a matter of moments. Let's look at the evidence of the heightened level of premeditation. These four defendants, by June 6th, the evidence tells us, had already planned, had already conspired, were already teaming up to snatch Charles Jones' life from him. June 6th. You recall this? The X Spaces discussion that was going on between Isaiah Chance and the victim in this case, Charles Jones. And what happens after that communication between them? That's what happens. Sean Gathrights' phone has communication from his co-defendant Rashad Murphy's phone at approximately 11:18 hours. And shortly after that recording was obtained by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office at 22:36 hours of Isaiah Chance arguing with Charles Jones. You remember his words. Hey, Julio, how's your foot doing? Make sure, this is out of Rashad Murphy's mouth, make sure, brah, in a good headspace, before he go with his move, we got bigger shit to tend to. They ain't worth an inward energy right now. That's directed at who? That's directed at his teammate, Sean Gathright. And what does Mr. Gathright do? 17 days before this murder happens, he likes that. He likes it. And then he replies, I ain't heard from bro today, but I'm going to check in with him. And then Rashad Murphy texts back, he probably not going to pick up. He on IG letting these N-words get him out of character. He turned up on that MF right now. And then Mr. Gathright, damn, all right, let me see what's up. So what does that tell us? That tells us that the plan was already in place more than 17 days before. This plan had been birthed, hatched, and formulated before June 6. Before June 6. This conspiracy and this premeditation spoke to a much higher level of premeditation and spoke to a very, very cold-blooded motive, a planned execution. As Miss Doherty told you last week, this was a hit. This was a hit. This kind of advanced planning, where that evil and that type of wickedness to take somebody is dwelling in a person's heart, and in this case, a team of people, problem solving, making decisions about it, working their way through this, developing the plan as they go along. A plan to not just murder, but if necessary, inflict carnage. And we saw that in the evidence. They were going to take out 6, and they were going to take out whoever might be there that might be in 6, because why not? And anyone else standing around, anyone else that might get in the way, that's just collateral damage. Now, why is the state going back through the facts with you? Because in the aggravating factors that you're going to be instructed on in this case, we are relying on that evidence. We are relying, as you saw, solely on our evidence from the guilt phase of this trial. Now, we did present some evidence. That evidence goes to rebut their suggestions of mental health mitigation, which you have seen have completely been rebutted and completely disproven. It is because of the extremely heightened level of premeditation in this case that the state, is presenting you with the aggravating factor, one that the law speaks to, of very cold-blooded murders. The aggravating factor of cold, calculated, and premeditated, that this murder was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral justification. That is the aggravating factor. We see in that evidence, the X spaces evidence, we see that evidence of this existing weeks before, but we see more than that. We see a conspiracy where its members are trying to ensure its integrity, its secrecy, and that it stays intact, and that nothing ruins the plan. Nothing gets in the way. I want to talk and walk back through the evidence in this case with you. Let's take a look at what occurred in this case. Mr. Murphy with his fully automatic Glock. And I'm going to come back to that because there's a few things I'll be pointing out to you in this evidence. It's very rare, folks, that an execution is caught on video like this. Look at the teamwork. Look at the precision. Look at the efficiency. That evidence alone, standing alone, without the X spaces evidence, without the Airbnb evidence of no one going through the front door, without all the other evidence, the evidence of Mr. Chance and Mr. Gathright coolly, calmly, businesslike loading up that Impala, without any of that evidence, you could look at this alone and your common sense would be screaming at you that this is the product, this type of murder, it's the product of heightened premeditation. That doesn't happen without conspiratorial premeditation, planning, wearing disguises to cover their identities. And not just disguises, folks. They're wearing all black to hide in the darkness, to hide their skin, to hide their faces. They're wearing hoodies. These are disguises. These are items that they brought with them as part of this plan. This alone, this evidence and the efficiency, the positioning, demonstrates the premeditation and the planning that went into this. And this evidence alone would be sufficient evidence beyond any doubt that this was a product of heightened, cold, calculated, premeditation and murder. The tenacity that occurs here, the lack of hesitation that occurs. This is a fully formed, committed mission that they are on that is immediately executed. As soon as the opportunity presents itself, they come out of the shadows where they're hiding. And we saw Mr. Davion Murphy, who snuck down behind those cars. And you heard me asking these forensic experts, isn't that significant that he did that? That he had the mindset and cognitive ability to hide behind the cars to avoid being detected by a very wary victim, someone who had had his life almost taken 9 months before in an attempted murder that Mr. Gathright is connected to by physical scientific evidence. A very wary prey that because of their advanced planning, they were not going to allow him to get away. And we saw that in the tenacity of this, how Mr. Gathright continued in a persistent fashion, chasing after the Charger, pumping rounds into it. And then we didn't even get to Davion Murphy following down behind the cars and unloading down the west side of the hotel. So this is the aggravator. The first-degree murder was committed in a cold, calculated, premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Cold. Cold means the murder was the product. Calm and cool reflection. Calculated means having a careful plan, a plan that is carefully constructed or prearranged, designed to commit murder. In the instructions that Judge Sisko will give you, she will read to you, and you will see that is the exact same instruction you got earlier on premeditation last week. But below that is her distinguishing this aggravating factor from simple premeditation. The aggravating factor to apply has to have a heightened level of premeditation demonstrated by a substantial period of reflection. A substantial period of reflection. Without any pretense of moral or legal justification. So what does this mean? It simply means that there is no claim of justification or excuse, even if it was insufficient to reduce the degree of the murder, that it would rebut the otherwise cold, calculated, or premeditated nature of this murder. Folks, there is no way to rebut the premeditated nature of this murder. There's just simply no way. There's way too much evidence of it. It is part of this. It's part and parcel of what we watched on that video. You cannot separate the two. To commit that type of crime would be impossible on the spur of the moment. That crime doesn't just speak of a lack of impulsivity. Remember hearing that term earlier in the last day or two? It doesn't just speak of a lack of impulsivity. It screams that this was extremely planned, that this was a designed mission. Rashad Murphy, let's talk about his participation in this plan. And I'm not going to go back through the amount of evidence that I covered with you in opening. I know that was a long process. The state wanted to give you an overview of this massive case full of evidence because of the just incredible investigative efforts of the Tampa Police Department and the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office in this case. Mr. Murphy obtains the Chevy Cruze, the silver Chevy Cruze. That's his first part of the contribution to this case. The car that's utilized as surveillance and as a spotter car, a car that's outside of the circle. Then Mr. Murphy, on his Airbnb account, sending his ID and reserving that Airbnb. And now we see the teamwork coming in. Right around the same time, within minutes, you remember in the evidence, Isaiah Chance receiving a $390 payment from another gang member, an ATK gang member, J. Breezy, sent to his Mr. Rich Off War Cash App. And that payment is made to Airbnb. It's paid. And that is established and that's arranged. We have that done over a day before this murder happens. And then we have this video. If the video of the murder itself doesn't establish how premeditated and planned, we need only look at this video, because even if you got rid of the X spaces discussions and you didn't have the earlier in the morning paying of an Airbnb, and you have these two defendants, Mr. Gathright and Mr. Chance, businesslike. Look at him. Look at the confidence that Mr. Gathright carries with him. They could very well have been packing to go on a cruise or something, and they are packing up that Impala with high-powered rifles, with ammunition, with disguises, the tools they would need to carry out this mission. That's in the afternoon. That is hours, 20 hours or so before the murder happens. And then when they get to Tampa, and they have to drive, remember, because this conspiracy now is traveling from Jacksonville down here to Tampa. They have to travel for 3 hours to get down here. And they're coordinating. We saw that in the LPR, that both these cars are following and coordinating, again showing advanced planning. But when they get here, we see this real-time demonstration of premeditation on the part of Mr. Gathright. And I'm gonna come back to that. Not too long after that, after Mr. Gathright is going through the Airbnb app and utilizing all their filters and searching and trying to find Charles Jones' Airbnb and trying to get an address for where he may be, utilizing the description that he is seeing on what's being posted by Mr. Jones. Not too long after that, we get this message from Mr. Murphy. Man, you know, I want it myself. If I could, I would have had it. So many hoes there. I know somebody can get it from them. Get the B&B for me, gang. They're all trying to find the Airbnb. And then after the run to the McDonald's to get provisions for this assault team and this surveillance team, and they all have a dinner, a late night dinner to make sure they got enough energy, they start coordinating. And remember in the evidence, by this point, these two defendants, Mr. Gathright and Mr. Chance, They've already gone down to teasers. They've already cased teasers. They've already checked it out to get the lay of the land. They start coordinating. Mr. Chance is not using his phone because he's going to use his girlfriend's phone. He doesn't want to use his phone. He doesn't want to be tracked, and he doesn't want to be connected. So they start sharing information. Mr. Gathright stores Miss Andrews' phone's information and his phone and a contact. They start sharing locations with each other. Now we're up to 2:08. They're still communicating with each other, coordinating. We see the coordination. We see Mr. Chance and his contributions starting here in the actual pursuit and the stalking and the hunting of Charles Jones. He's at teasers. As Miss Doherty told you, he's wearing a hoodie. He's wearing a COVID mask. He's using his girlfriend as kind of a decoy or camouflage so that he's not standing around in the middle of the summer wearing a hoodie and a mask looking suspicious. It's just a young couple walking around in the parking lot. And they are there and they're observing Charles Jones and his friends as they're at teasers. Still communicating. Now they're trying to get Gathright to pick up his phone, maybe trying to FaceTime him, which we learned in the evidence is not collected in CDRs, call detail records, and they're telling him, pick up your effing phone. More coordination through the time that Mr. Jones is leaving. And now he and his entourage have gone to Truth 18, and they're at Truth 18, and they're getting ready to leave from there. And more coordination. Sharing location so they can follow each other. Which leads us to the hotel. We know from the evidence, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to specifically address Mr. Gathright, because I know you all have concerns about Mr. Gathright. He was 18 years old. The state's never hid from that fact. Is that a mitigating factor? Absolutely, it's a mitigating factor. And it's up to each of you to decide how much weight you want to give that. But we need to look at what Mr. Gathright did, and we need to look at how he conducted himself in this early morning, well past loading that Impala. That's Mr. Gathright driving that Impala. And you remember, the assault team never would have been able to find that hotel if Mr. Chance and Miss Andrews hadn't have followed the victims, stayed just far enough behind and tailing them so they weren't detected, but able to see where they were going and relay that. Because Mr. Gathright, coordinating with his co-conspirator in this extremely premeditated plot, went directly to where the victim and his entourage had already gone. They had already pulled into the home to suites when Mr. Gathright was nowhere to be seen. Mr. Gathright immediately navigates that Impala around the north end of that hotel, passing all of those cars in that parking lot, passing all of the filled parking spots as he went around the north through that complex, around the Holiday Inn and back around to the west side. Now what we see in these photographs is Mr. Gathright navigating that car and making sure to do a three-point turn so he doesn't reveal their presence in this car that they have hidden. Now, if you go back to Truth 18, which I kind of skipped over, you remember Mr. Chance, the surveillance team. He gets out with Miss Andrews because they're just a young couple, and they can get closer and make closer observation and give that intelligence to the strike team, the hit team, the assault team. Mr. Gathright's driving the Impala. He parks across the street, or parks, right next to the strip mall where Truth 18 is. But as they're getting ready to leave, and they're getting information that he must have been receiving, Mr. Gathright repositions across the street and pulls up to that stop sign. And one thing you may have seen in the evidence, He stops and then he creeps forward so that he can see around that corner and see the entourage and see the victim's car. You heard Detective Ramos, this detective who did this incredible job and sat on the stand as a true encyclopedia of this case, telling you it is his opinion they were getting ready to possibly try an assault or to follow. But he gets there and he's also now part of the surveillance. And he's staging, waiting. Here in the hotel parking lot, he is taking the precautions. He goes down, and then he turns the car around and comes back without going around that corner or breaking the plane where they could be seen. He goes up around the corner. There he goes past the Tesla. They park. And then you have to think, there's no way they were driving around Tampa in June with hoodies and masks over their face for 4 hours. Because you remember, this starts at around 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and this is now 4:30 in the morning, 3.5 hours at least. So they had to kit up, get their hoodies on, pull these masks or gaiters or whatever they're using to cover their faces. Mr. Gathright has to retrieve that AR-15. And now he's handling it, and they're running, and they're acting as a team. These 3 individuals that are the assault team. And as I said, Rashad Murphy, or Davion Murphy, with his ski mask on, with only eye holes showing, with the 300 blackout, crouched down, making himself unobtrusive, trying to make sure that they conceal their presence. Because this was all predicated and designed around an ambush. And you remember the state telling you in opening statements that they brought fire supremacy? That was part of the plan. That was part of this, to bring overwhelming firepower to this situation, because they weren't going to let Charles Jones get away. Not this time. Not this time. They were going to take him. He was not going back to Jacksonville. He was going to stay here in Tampa. So they bring 3 shooters with high-powered rifles and all of this firepower. In a few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about another aggravating factor that deals with that. But I will say it again. That firepower was brought for a specific purpose, to make sure he didn't escape, and anyone else that got shot, it didn't matter to any of us.
So there you have it. The guys have been convicted, wrapped up. The prosecutor is laying down, he laid down a very, very strong case of premeditated unaliving that these guys are involved in. He went in step by step. He followed them from Jacksonville to Tampa. He has footage of these guys following, conversing back and forth through cell phones, and following Julio Foolio from one place to another to decide whether they would unalive wherever they would unalive him at. It was the deciding factor. And in this case, they chose the last hotel he was at. Is this case premeditated? I would say yes. They went out on a long shot, covered their faces, concealed their identity, and still got caught. What does it tell you, America? That if you do something in 2026, 9 times out of 10, with cameras everywhere, you will be busted. You will be caught. It's almost as though they don't even need snitches anymore, because they got cameras everywhere to record you. So when you're in the wrong or you do something wrong, there you have it. And they replay it all back to you in court. They have their phone records. They have how he was swiping through the phones and looking for Julio Fulio's location in Tampa. Sean Gabriel, they have that evidence. They have evidence from a Tesla showing Davion Murphy creeping up to the scene. They have evidence saying Rashad Murphy let off the first shots. And they have video of all of this. There's video of all of this. Again, young bloods, if y'all out here, if anybody's watching this content, you need to think really hard before you do something that could cost you your life. You look at these guys' faces, they're all very sad. Again, like I said in my previous videos, they were partying, they were laughing, they thought it was a joke, but the court's not laughing. Facing life is not funny. Or death. Remember, next time anybody does this type of activity, remember, if you do this type of activity, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna get busted. Cameras everywhere. Do I feel sorry for these guys in the position that they're in? I can't feel sorry for them. I can't say if they're guilty or if they're innocent. What I can say is it looks very bad after the conviction, because they already been wrapped up as convicted. It looks really bad to be on stand begging for a life sentence, begging not to be unalived. We're gonna come back with the next video. I'm pretty sure that it may be a day out before the conviction. But to anybody that's watching this content, don't be a fool. Don't waste your life like this. And like, share, and subscribe to IOU TV. We'll be back. The final verdict, whether they get life or death. Peace, y'all.